Hello, everyone. My name is Brad Taylor, and I'm from Optimizely. And quick show of hands, has anyone heard of Optimizely? Yeah, okay. A/B testing? Yeah. Okay. At its root, Optimizely first started off as an A/B testing company. You basically have a control, and then you have a variation, and you see which one performs better. But over the years, we've grown our product a lot. We now have web experimentation, but we also have personalization, recommendations, as well as we now have a lot of developer tools for full stack mobile and OTT. Experimentation is something that before Optimizely, only the big people in the Valley were doing it. Like Netflix, they run every single product change that they do is tested before it becomes the default. Facebook, they test hundreds of things a day, and Mark Zuckerberg's been quoted saying, is it going to kill the company? If not, let's test it. And then Google, they run 7,000 live traffic searches a year, and only 0.3% of those actually get put into their search algorithm. So lots of throughput, not too many actually make it. And then Amazon, of course, does a lot of experimentation too. There's actually an article that just came out a few weeks ago in the Harvard Business Review that really shows the numbers compared to the companies that do online experiments and the companies that don't. The numbers are pretty staggering. Like Contentful, as a developer, allows you to put content everywhere because it's developer first. We allow you to experiment everywhere, and we allow you to experiment on, watches, mobile devices, your website, and we're used by some of the biggest brands in the industry. I may be the one up here speaking, but really this is the work of our small team. So we have myself, Bryce, who's in the room too, and Dano. We have Jerry out in Amsterdam, and then Takeshi, who couldn't make it tonight. But our team is really responsible for not only our website and our marketing website, but also how we use Optimizely on Optimizely. So a lot of companies look up to us about how we use our own product. So let me tell you a little story about how it was before Contentful. We signed on to Contentful about in April. But a little bit about my journey with CMSs. So I actually started working or building a CMS before I even knew what a CMS was at WebMD. They basically said, hey, our health coaches need to be able to update the site without using you guys, so build that. So I built that. And then I came out to San Francisco and worked at a company called Clickability, which was the first SaaS CMS, and grew it from 6 to 120. I then started my own agency doing CMS-focused consulting, and then I came on to Optimizely, where I led the solutions architect team, and now I'm leading our integration, our migration to Contentful. So I've been in the CMS space for a really long time. So when I was doing my onboarding to the web team, I was looking at our marketing website wiki, and there was this quote in here that I thought was fantastic, and it's, we use GitHub as our CMS. This means that you will follow a software engineering workflow to make changes on the marketing website. Don't worry, it's not that hard, and after a while, you'll start to love it. Now, if you're a software engineer and you work in GitHub, that's great, but we don't want to be the bottleneck. And if you're a marketer and you start looking at things like software engineering workflow and pull requests and YAML, you're just going to gloss over. And the whole, it's not that hard. I have a few people you can talk to that would beg to differ, and they did not love it. So essentially we also had an engineering stack that had not been updated in over 2 years. I think we're using like Node 2 to have a static site generator. It was not Gatsby, because content updates were expected to be done in GitHub, not Contentful, and simple text changes took over 30 minutes to deploy. And we couldn't utilize Optimizely's full platform. So we thought it was time for a change. So is anyone in here like looking for a CMS or in that process? So there are a few things that you want to think about when making the change. So first off, we had to make sure that it was easy for non-technical users. That was just a must. Something that has granular roles and permissions. We want to roll this out to our entire company. So, making sure that the legal team only sees what they want to see, the marketing team only sees what they want to see. Version control and backups is a must. Also, we wanted it to be language agnostic. We chose Node right now, but who knows what other products and things that we want to build in the future. Also, a good CMS has a strong separation of design and data layers. Contentful does that really well. And then the ability to easily extend and customize. WordPress has its faults, but at the end of the day, it does have a lot of plugins. So we were looking for something that also had the ability to add on to it. And of course, we had to have the ability to integrate into Optimizely. So this is kind of our marketing website right now, and this is what our team was responsible for. And you may think of your marketing site like this is where people come to find out about your product. Well, in this day and age, that's not necessarily the case, because we also have a knowledge base which talks about how to use Optimizely and where everything works. We also have our academy where people can get certified on A/B testing and experimentation. We also have a marketing site. Developers may go and see our SDKs. And then we have a community as well. So the problem is that all of that content was siloed across many different services. So the customer journey can start anywhere. Then we also, when we first started, we only had an office in San Francisco, then Amsterdam. But over the past few years, we've started to grow. So localization has been a really big part of something that we need to think about. We just launched a office in Sydney last month. So ultimately, what our ultimate goal is to enable our non-technical users to share and update localized content across the entire customer journey, all built on Contentful. So I want to tell you a little bit about the migration process. So like every good project starts with a spreadsheet. And this is just a little bit of that. It continues for a lot of rows. I think I see Bryce, little nervous twitch there, because we really wanted to see, because we had a static site, and we wanted to see what are the like things. We had to make our content models, and then what are the different components that make up the site. And then, of course, we had to decide on an engineering stack. We decided on Node. I've been developing in Node for the past 6 years. We use Express for our routing. We chose handlebars. We were thinking about React, but we had thought our old site was done in handlebars, and we might save a little bit of time. Spoiler, we didn't save any time. And then, of course, our data layer being Contentful. So first off, what are the content that we update the most? So we have resources. This is where people can go and get white papers, ebooks, filling out the forms, getting the lead information. We also have customer stories. So showcasing, our product marketers want to showcase how our customers are using our product. We also have different events, press releases, and we have a growing partner network of both solution partners and technology partners. But most of our site was made up of what we're calling index pages. And you'll see this design a lot in B2B, where essentially you have different, and we're calling them modules, you can call them components. But for instance here, this page is, we have a module hero split, and then a bunch of different media showcases. And if you scroll down, you'll see some other ones like icon cards or center content or media showcase. But what Contentful allows us to do is take that site, and in Contentful, it's just a reference field to those different modules. So if you need to add a new component to the site, you can simply just add a new module. You can drag and drop them. Contentful makes it super easy. But if you give a marketer 100 modules, they're going to want 101. They're going to want their site to look different and interesting. So we thought a little bit about this, and we knew that we were going to need customization. So we added customization that is controlled through Contentful. So we allow it within a certain page to edit the header class, the body class, the main class, and the footer class. So if we have a page that doesn't need a header or footer, we can easily swap those on and off. Then at the module level, we also have our module standard class. Like one here is going to look like the same thing over and over again. But if you want, for instance, these are 3 instances of a module media showcase. One, the image is on the left, one, it's on the right, one in the middle has a different blue background. These are all just configurations inside Contentful. We've even taken our components down to the CTA level, because CTA may look like just a button, but there's a lot of functionality that goes into that. So linking internally or externally to open a modal or play a video. There's also custom tracking that may need to happen. And if someone says, hey, we need to update all these CTAs, you don't want to have to go update it in 900 different places. So while this is what it looks like on here, in the back end, it looks like that, but with Contentful's UI extensions, we've made a live view editor so that when you're adding new CTAs, you can see what that will look like. So one suggestion I would say, though, is it would be helpful to have the ability to hide supporting content types, because most of our entry points are in those like index pages, resources, and all the modules they don't really need to see. So, kind of condense that little list a little bit so that they only see those but can still create them. So localization. So most people think of localization as like English versus German or French. But there's also the little nuances too. Like we use personalization a lot, and we just launched an Australian office. One of the things that they asked is all the Z's be changed to S's and things like that. So Contentful really helped us out with this. So some of the requirements we had was the ability to do transcreation versus just translation. So being able to see it in context was really important. We also wanted to roll out independent regional websites. And then the last two was they wanted to have the choice for content for the regional sites, meaning I do not want this English content on our German site or vice versa, because they wanted to have the ability to have non-English first content. And that last point was where we were a little hung up, because when you set up a space in Contentful, you say what your default language is. And by default, it says, okay, if you have something in the German translation, it'll use that. English translation, use the English on the .com or the German site. There is the option to fall back. If there's no German translation, just fall back to the English. That works great. However, you do have the option to say don't fall back to English, but the one we really struggled with was how do we, if someone in Germany wants to do a German first content, how do we do that? So we put our thinking caps on, and one of the problems was, required fields always need English content. Our default language is English. So we had to figure out a way around that. And we thought, do we create a different space for each region? Could we use custom locales? But what we came up with was just a checkbox. So we said, okay, do you want this content on English or German? And you could just check them. Where you just say, oh, I only want this on German, or I want this on both. And we updated our queries to support that. This allows for not only being able to localize individual fields, but because we're using the modules, you could also do completely different layouts as well. So now we still have the same fallback. German's in German, English is in English. It can fall back to English. But if they only select English, it will only select on English. And if they choose it only needs to be on German, they can put the German text, but we actually just put it in the English field. So it does the fallback there. And if anyone's dealt with this before, I'd love to hear about your guys' solution, because this is something we kind of struggled with a little bit. So one suggestion we'd have here is to allow the ability for the user to define what the default language is on a per content basis if need be. So, the Optimizely integration. So that was the last bullet point. And when we started thinking about it, Optimizely integration, we're thinking like, how can we do this in a way that isn't going to really be prescriptive? Because every single contentful setup is completely different. And not only each contentful setup, but every single vertical is different because you all have different metrics that you're trying to move. For instance, media may want to do headline testing and ad placement tests, whereas retail may want to test price. And for B2B, our bread and butter is landing page conversions and signups. So what we've built is a series of UI extensions so that we can allow developers to integrate with our products and decide using our REST API and the SDKs that Contentful provides to build the experiments that they want. So we have a UI extension for being able to select the events. So these are the metrics that you measure your experiment success with. We also have audiences. So who is this experiment going to be targeted towards? And then we also wanted to be able to bring in the results, or at least a summary of the results, into Contentful so that if I'm working on a landing page, I can quickly see, how is that call to action doing? How is this landing page performing? So one thing on the UI extensions, it would be nice to have the ability to configure extensions so that each instance can have a different variables. So for instance, if I want to have this instance read from this project in Optimizely versus this instance, being able to configure that would be great. So what we've built for our own purposes is split page testing in Optimizely. So what we wanted to do is enable our marketing team to launch experiments directly from within Contentful. We realize that marketers and people who are creating the content are going to be in Contentful way more. If you tell people, hey, go set up your page in Contentful, now go to Optimizely and set up your experiment, huge drop off. And really, if you have more experiments, you have more wins. So, and while Optimizely web is great for small changes, we've utilized our Optimizely full stack product so that we can do completely different layouts, and it's not just text changes. And if you're not familiar, so Optimizely Full Stack, it's a series of SDKs. We have them in Python, Java. We use the Node SDK. And I'm going to give a quick demo of how that works. I can just go in here, create a new entry. It's just a new content model like everything else. And I'm going to call this, or it's an Optimizely split test item. I'm going to give it a name. So Contentful demo. And the slug, where do I want this to go? Let's say our resources page. And then these landing pages that we've built using the module system, I can add those. So for instance, I want to add the resources page, and maybe I want to send them to this new page, Digital Disruptors, and insert those. So what this does is the top version is my control, the second version is my variation. I can say, what do I want to, these are events that are in Optimizely. I can say I want to choose, viewed the landing page or clicked on a CTA. I could also add an audience here if maybe I wanted to target specific audiences that I've already set up in my code. For this, we're just going to say everyone. And then once I hit publish here, what happens is it utilizes Contentful's webhooks. We've published a new piece of content, it sends it to Optimizely, and it has created, if I go into Optimizely, and refresh the page here, it's created my full stack experiment. So a marketer doesn't have to go and set this up, create this. They've done it fully within Contentful. As you can see, it has my metrics that I put here, the name, and I'm using the keys in Contentful for not only the name, but also the variations, so that I can say if they're in variation A, show this landing page. If they're in variation B, show this page. Now, if I go over to one that has been running for a while, and I scroll down to the different results, So a user would be able to see those different results. They'd be able to see how many visitors are remaining before they hit statistical significance, and then be able to make the decision on which landing page is performing best. So right now we are launching our academy with full certification on October 17th. We're about 70% of migrating our entire marketing site over. And then we have planned to move our developers sites in Q4 with our knowledge base and community happening next year. But we've also launched a lot of microsites. So we have this maturity model assessment that's launching soon. That basically, is a quiz that people can take and see how their program, their experimentation program is doing, and any recommendations that we can give them. We also have our user conference coming up, which we're having people speak from the New York Times, The Gap, Atlassian, just IBM, Microsoft, and it's in Vegas at the Wynn. And we also launched that site on Contentful. This was actually the first site that we launched, kind of as a POC. If you're interested in going to Vegas, I was able to, if you go to our website, and put in the code 700OpticOn17, you can get $700 off. So it's pretty much almost free to come to Vegas for our conference. So where are we going? So we want to complete the content migration and sunset our old code base. We're also looking to open source the split page test that I just demoed. We're also looking at doing a website redesign in Q4, and we are actually looking at Gatsby to do our front end and possibly the static site builder. And then we're going to just continue to build and open source more UI extensions. So all those use cases you saw, for media to retail, we want to have as many different use cases as possible. And then of course, and then just build out the use case specific ones. So that's all I got. Questions? Yeah, so essentially what happens, the request comes in, we have an SDK, a Node SDK that's based on a unique user ID. We split it, our SDK says this person belongs in variation A or variation B, and that's why I used the contentful IDs as the variation ID. So I can say if they're in variation 1, I have the ID right there readily available to me, grab that index page versus the other one. So you would create the page with, it doesn't even have to be the same path. The way that we set it up is we have a slug field, and you say, okay, this page belongs at this path. If you're running an experiment, that supersedes that. So it'll say, oh, there's an experiment running on there, use one of these 2 index pages. But we're grabbing all that information at once, so we have it, we don't have to go back and grab it. Yeah, so right now we're using handlebars for our front ends. We are looking to migrate those to React components. But yeah, essentially every single module it has its own CSS file. It has its own handlebars partial template, and then we name those templates the exact same thing as our content items. So when I'm looping through what's in that index page, I can just quickly reference the same name as the template, like, oh, it's a module hero, so give me the module hero template. All right, thank you.